Hello, Craig. Nice to meet you. Now, do I call you Professor or Doctor or just Mister?
No,
Doctor.
doctor. I'm a non-academic. I work in the commercial world, so I'm a doctor.
Dr. Craig Knight. Lovely to see you. Thank you for zooming in with me today.
Pleasure.
For people who don't know your work, will you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. My background is sort of office management, leadership, design, that kind of stuff, and I've been researching the effect of leadership, management, and in this case, design, on how people feel, on how they perform, on how they react. And I've been doing that since 2003. So, along with various teams, we've got quite a bit of data now.
And you were an Honorary Research Fellow at Exeter University, weren't you?
That's right, still am. Still have the
You
honorary
still are.
research fellowship position. Yeah, so it's very useful. That means if, for example, my company is me, but I can pull in different people from all over the world to handle projects of any particular size. So that's quite useful.
Oh, very useful. Well, I speak to a lot of my clients about how good design and art can increase productivity in the offices. It's one of my selling points with art and offices.
Sure.
And as an expert, I thought I would just ask you a few more in-depth questions to get your insight. So my first question is, where do companies even start when they're thinking about increasing productivity?
Well, they start with the most important asset, which they tend to forget, which is their people.
Mm.
Too many companies will look at the space, they'll look at their own techniques, their own inputs, their own thoughts, without regard necessarily for the people that provide the productivity, which are the staff.
Oh, I see. So how might they even realise they're not being as productive as they could be?
Well, the
Are the
managers are.
workforce unhappy? Is that a good indicator?
Well, if the managers, this again is quite easy. If the managers are wrapped up in a particular system that they think works, it almost certainly won't work. They should be wrapped up in their staff, not wrapped up in what they think.
Oh, how so? Can you give me an example?
Well, let me give you a quick example. I say we've been looking at this for a long time, and there's a system called Lean Six Sigma, which people may have heard of, which is the most dominant management methodology in the Western world. And it's all about, in the case of Lean, it's about the eradication, right, it's right around for you. Lean is about the eradication of waste, Six Sigma is about the eradication of error, and companies put a lot of effort into getting these things right. Now, if you just think about those things for a minute, if you want to eradicate waste and error, you just close the company down.
Mm.
So just on those particular basis alone, it's a fairly spurious end to go chasing towards. What you really should be doing is looking at your staff and talking to them and understanding what makes them tick to make them productive, not imposing an outside methodology on them.
So do you think the space people work in is crucial to people's productivity?
The space is very important. It is how the people use that space that is more important.
All right. Can you give me an example?
Well, we're talking art today, aren't we? Right?
We are.
So if you put people into a space where there is something engaging, or you put them into a space where there is nothing, then the space that is engaging will be better than the space where there is nothing, all things taken into account.
Yes, I read an interesting statistic in your 2010 study that people could be up to 42% more productive.
Not 32% more productive, 45% increase in well-being.
Ah.
There are some stunning results. If you just, for example, treat people like animals, it works quite well. Think of a zoo. Right? If you put a gorilla into a zoo, you would put in things like trees for it to climb, you will put tires for it to swing on, water feeds for it to play with. If you do that, that's the least we'll do for a zoo animal. But if you do that for people, you get design awards. In a really interesting office where you've got trees and water features and things like that. People win huge design awards of that from the Royal Institute of British Architects. It's a big deal. Why? It's the least we do for a zoo animal. It's the least we should do for human beings.
So for people who are thinking about this now, you've mentioned what the basics should be for an animal. How would you explain workplace well-being to someone who never understood it or heard of it before?
How to explain it? What can you imagine what well-being is? Well, it's an interesting question. Well-being is the state of well-being is a state of feeling comfortable in your space. It's a state of being relaxed in where you are. It's a state of being at home. If you don't feel comfortable and relaxed in your space, you can't feel well in it. So again, to impose a space that somebody from outside thinks is good is not possibly going to be as good as a space that the people within that space feel comfortable in, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I do think there's a big trend towards people noticing now how their space affects staff. There's lots of talk and articles about well-being, and specifically with mental health. Do you think an enriched environment with plants and art is really important for people's mental health?
I do, and I demur a little bit from the initial statement. People talk a lot about it, but if you look at the way that a lot of office space is designed, it's still designed to fit fit many people as you can into as little space as possible with as little enrichment as goes on. That is what most offices look like. So a lot of this talk about well-being is spurious and is there to make the company look good. It is vital to make people look good by increasing their involvement in what goes on.
So what's the simplest but most effective something that a company could do?
Say to you, Katie, this is your space, why don't you develop it yourself? Talk about space.
Yes.
This is your space. Why don't you tell me how you like to be managed best, Katie, rather than me telling you and say, this is how we're going to do things. Like that, yeah. Those two things.
Now, in some of your work, I read that if you ask people that question, they start to work quicker. Is that true?
They work quicker?
Yes. Is that what I read? That
they work better? No, so I mean, they don't necessarily react quicker because sometimes if you say, well, what would you like to do? You get a series of strange faces because people aren't being used to ask that question. They're used to responding to what management tell them. But can I say this? Yes, you always get a better result when you ask people to get involved in their own space when there is a significant result. You never find a worse result by letting people do things themselves in their own space.
Interesting. Do you think that's because when you give people autonomy, you've given them the opportunity to relax, or is it, what is it about giving people autonomy that makes them more productive, do you think?
Well, there are three things if you want to create a really good, happy workspace, and that's you need to give people a sense of control, a sense of trust, and the resource to do the jobs that they've got. And if you give people those things, you get really good results because you have everything there that you need. If you're my manager and you trust me and you give me the tools to do the jobs and the wherewithal to get on with it, then I should respond to that. And it's not a case of a soft environment. If I don't, you get rid of him and get somebody else in. It's not a case of saying this is soft stuff. It's just how to get the best out of people. And that's all the studies find in essence. But well, there's a saying that Charles Handy said, and we agree ourselves, and the work that we've done is that business is full of very clever people doing remarkably stupid things.
I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this will probably agree with that. So if a company starts to enrich their space and they've spoken to their staff and given them some autonomy, how would they start to measure whether they've become more productive? That's
a lovely question. Companies generally speaking don't know how to measure productivity. As you said before, you talk about Lean and Six Sigma measuring waste and error. Now, if you don't know what waste and what error you're looking at, you're going to measure the wrong stuff. An example that I'd really like to give is that the most monitored, the most controlled people tend to work in call centers. Right?
Yes.
Most call centers, if you're doing something, let's say like having a 999 call, what happens is that you will be charged on how quickly you answer a call, how quickly you deal with the call, and how quickly you deal with the administration to do with that call. Right? More calls, more productivity, and that's how they're measured. So the most productive call in that environment is you pick up the call instantly, you tell the person on the end of the phone to get lost, you put the phone down again, there's no associated work, and you get lots of calls going through the course of the day doing it. And they are the most monitored people on the planet. Now, I mentioned this to an organization, I shan't mention their name, it's a very large telecoms organization, and they said, oh, we don't do that. They said, what we do is we measure customer satisfaction. We have 3 questions that we ask. You've probably seen these. Questions come after you've dealt with a particular organization. What do you think such and so? That's how we measure productivity. Right. So if you, for example, give somebody the latest iPhone for £5 a month with all the text and data and messaging they want, you'll get incredibly satisfied customers. but it's not very productive. It won't do much for the business.
No, customer satisfaction is different from productivity, really, isn't
Precisely. And that's what, but yet people measure all kinds of things as productivity, and they're wrong. So it's really important to measure what goes on in an organization to say that's productivity. And one more thing, if I may, what a lot of companies do is they ask people about productivity.
Yeah.
There's the largest organizational questionnaire that goes around businesses at the moment that says, how productive are you at the moment? We are clueless as to how productive we are. We don't know. We have nothing to base it on. It's a measure of performance productivity. It's a bit like a car. You can tell how comfortable you are by how you're sitting. You can tell how you feel by where you are. But if you want to tell how fast a car goes, how productive a human being is, it's a quantitative measure. You cannot do it by question.
Goodness, there's a lot to think about there. Companies might even start. Of course, we're in this horrible epidemic, and business practices have changed drastically. Within a matter of days, the entire workforce is working from home. So do you think flexible working and working from home options increase people's productivity?
There's some interesting stuff that goes on with working from home. And generally speaking, it's about as productive as working in an office. There are more distractions from working from home. There are more things that you can do. You realise that Hoover needs doing. You realise that, I don't know, there's a bit of daytime telly that's quite good. But then you can work hours to suit yourself as well. So if you're happy in your office and you're happy at home, you tend to find that the two things wash out. You tend to get roughly the same kind of production. What you will find, almost certainly, is that people who are not generally trusted to work on their own in the office and suddenly find themselves working at home will be better workers.
Ah, interesting, because they feel like they're going to be checked up on, perhaps. Is that?
Yes. And so these harsh managerial techniques, of which there are quite a few, I suspect will be badly shown up by the fact that people can work and will be trusted. The problem we're going to find, of course, is that there's a lot of, well, as a company, there's going to be a worldwide depression going on as a result of the coronavirus. There'll be a lot of things to hide behind there. But on a knock-for-knock basis, it's almost certain that people that work from home now will feel happier than they did when they work in a really oppressive office.
And do you think happiness corresponds directly to productivity?
Corresponds as in correlates, yes.
Correlates.
We have, in all the work we've done, we have never found a place where people are too happy, too relaxed, too comfortable. All the key variables go in the same direction. So if you're happy, if your well-being's good, you're more productive. If you're unhappy, let's say if you're not as comfortable as you'd like to be, your productivity is decreased.
My next question was going to be how you can create the most productive area for you to work from home, but I just want to park that to one side, because what you've just talked about, I think, reflects quite a lot in tech startup culture. Oh, yeah. Have you done any research with those companies that have slides and foosball tables and, you know, free snacks in the fridge? Oh, yeah. And are those types of companies more productive than people who work in concrete and glass boxes?
That's a really interesting question, Katie. With the way spaces are designed are fascinating, and there is this, as you just said, there's quite a large clash between the companies that have kind of nothing, very stark spaces, and those that have the pool tables and the ping pong balls and the beer in fridges and the sport and the telly. And we look at those spaces and we wonder, why do you get spaces that are designed by 15-year-old boys?
Yes.
Because you don't find the opposite way around. You don't find, to be stereotypical in the direction, you don't find white wine in chiller cabinets, you don't find romantic movies playing on the telly or handsome chaps taking you from one room to another. The design is very laddist.
Yes.
And it's very interesting because the design industry isn't. It's at least a 50% gender split. So why are we getting these teenage boy spaces with slides and ski gondolas and all kinds of things? Well, why? Why do we do that?
Do you think that puts off the female side of the workforce, or do you think they enjoy the laddist?
Well, it goes back to what we were saying at the start of this. The best space is one that you develop yourself. But if you're going to treat people like an animal, treat them like a zoo animal, so put them in a space where there's interesting stuff. So it's much more interesting to be in a space where you've got things going on than where you haven't. But the best space is when we say, well, let's stop designing for teenage boys and let's design for everybody and let's all have an input. That's the best space. So there's a clear 1, 2, 3 there.
Do you think anybody's doing it really well at the moment? Have you come across any companies that you say, yes, you're on the right track?
Yes, they are very few and far between. Very few. There's the Innovation Centre at the University of Exeter. I recommend people go and have a look at that. There's another company called WNW Digital who are doing a very good job. There's a company called Ambius who do things very well. But most companies are rubbish because what they want is they want a managerial trick. They want to keep themselves in charge. Biophilia is a case in point. People talk an awful lot about biophilia at the moment. And it's just another trick to say that managers know best and this is the space that's best for you. And it isn't. It's just another design trick. And if you want to look at biophilia, go to the Johnson Wax building before the Second World War. It is beautiful. It is designed around the concept of plant structure, and it is stunning. And it's 1938. So it's not new. It's just another trope, keep the managers in charge. But it's a much better trope than Lean and Six Sigma.
Would you tar art for offices with that same brush? Do you think it's a managerial trick, or do you think it actually has got a place in productivity and making people happy?
It's the same. Art is a beautiful thing, and art can be fantastically enriching. But if you're going to have art that's chosen by the board, and the board are putting their choices around the workforce, it's not going to be as good as if the works of art are chosen by the staff, because they have more say. That's what art is fabulous. And there is one thing on art, quantity is a good thing. If you've got £1 million to spend on art, rather than get one picture that's worth £1 million, it's better to get quite a few pictures and spread them about a bit.
Interesting. Oh, I like that fact. And is it true to say, do you think that enriched spaces that have plants and art that are sort of on the track to making people happy at work, do those things reduce sick days? And do you think they have an effect on people's mental health as well?
Absolutely, yeah. It's the same kind of argument that the more people see, the more people can get engaged with what's going on around them in terms of plants, in terms of art, in terms of smell, in terms of light, in terms of everything, then the better they are. And the only problem, what we're talking about sounds incredibly logical, but people are emotionally wedded to what goes on. That's the thing. So if you're wedded to a particular philosophy, it's really hard to tear yourself away from it. As we talk now, it's a very simple thing to realize that you don't treat people like you treat, I don't know, a battery chicken. But people still do because they've been trained to do it, and it's hard to get. So the psychological thing is really, it's a very hard break to make. And that's where the help comes, in getting people away from that kind of thing.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to the question I was going to ask earlier, back to people working from home.
Yes.
Are there things people can do now they've been forced to work from home that can make their space and make their work more productive? Can they create productive space?
Yes, there are, and that is, and actually, I do this little thing called Psychology in the Shed. It's on LinkedIn. Have a squiz. There are a couple of things on there that might help. But essentially, remember that it's your space. So if you have to work, for example, an 8-hour day, you don't need to start at 9 and go through to 5. You do the stuff that's best for you. You might want to do it in 2-hour blocks or 2 4-hour blocks, or you might be okay with it, or you work with whatever's right for you. And you experiment with the space that you're in. So if you like to sit at the kitchen table, then make sure the kitchen table's set up and is the right space for you to work on. The things around you are what you like. And decide where you want to sit. Do you want to work at the kitchen table? Do you want to work in the bedroom? And then what do you want to wear? I mean, I don't know if you can see me, I've got a nice scruffy rugby shirt on, it's fine. But
if you're green memo today, didn't we?
Yeah, there you go. If you're used to working in a suit and you work best in a suit, rather than your pajamas, then put your suit on. Whatever works best for you, do that and play. And the one last thing is there's a thing called proxemics, how you feel. Then work on where you sit. Where you sit at the moment, as I see you, Kate, you're very good. You've got your back to a wall, and that's very nice. If you've got your back to a door where people tend to come and go, that can be off-putting. So have a look and see how you sit. So play with your space, make yourself a home, and work out your own time scale. That's the best thing you can do.
Fabulous. Thank you for all that advice, and thank you for your insights. It has been truly fascinating. I'm definitely going to take away some information to research there and pass it on to my clients as well. Is there anything else that you want to add that you don't think we've touched on that we probably should?
I think so, Katie. I think it's fine. I think the most important thing that managers need to do is trust their staff. Staff, once they are trusted, can get on with the job. It's not a soft option. No one expects people to work softer. And the hard thing is breaking the wedding, the marriage, if you like, between the diktat and the manager. That's the hard thing that I can help with, really. That's what I do.
Fab. Thank you so much, Dr. Craig Knight. I nearly said professor again there. Dr. Craig Knight, thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.